Hey, this is Dave DeCamp from antiwar.com. This is anti-war news for Thursday, September 5th, 2024. All right, the first story at the top of antiwar.com today. The U.S. is close to giving Ukraine long-range missiles. So the U.S. is close to reaching an agreement on giving Ukraine cruise missiles that could hit targets deep inside Russia. And this was reported by Reuters on Tuesday, citing U.S. officials. So the officials said that the U.S. is expected to include Joint Air-to-Surface Standoff Missiles, JASSM, or I don't know if people call them JASSMs, but that's what the abbreviation sounds like. They're expected to include these missiles in a weapons package that will be announced for Ukraine this fall. But first, there are technical issues to work through to ensure that they can be fired by Ukraine's Soviet-made fighter jets. So they're saying it could take a few months, but sometime this fall, they're expected to announce they're sending these things over. So an older version of the JASSM can hit targets over 230 miles, and there are newer versions that can fly over 500 miles. So the ATACMS missiles have a range of about 190 miles, and those are the longest range missiles that Ukraine has from the U.S. right now. So 230 miles, that would be an escalation in range. 500 miles would be huge. That would more than double Ukraine's strike range. But I would guess, so Reuters said that there's these two types and that they were unable to establish which kind the U.S. is considering sending Ukraine. I would guess the 230-mile one would at least be the first, and that would be easier for them that would put less strain on U.S. military stockpiles, according to this Reuters story. So the U.S. officials said that providing these missiles could alter the conflict by putting more Russian territory in range of powerful precision-guided missiles, which they said was a big concern of the Biden administration. So this is concerning because of the language that they're using here. And again, they're citing U.S. officials. They're suggesting that the administration is preparing to give Ukraine the green light to launch long-range strikes inside Russian territory using U.S.-provided missiles, which would mark another huge escalation of this proxy war and risk a major response from Moscow. We just saw Russia saying that they are changing their nuclear doctrine in response to Western escalations. And the U.S. right now is allowing Ukraine to use U.S. armored vehicles, missiles, and bombs in its offensive in Kursk, but the U.S. still insists that it won't support long-range strikes, at least for the time being. So again, this is just another sign that they might be willing to lift those restrictions. And they also cited, this report also cited a congressional staffer who said sending these missiles to Ukraine would put pressure on the administration to lift the restrictions on the use of the missiles. So again, very concerning stuff here. And then on Wednesday, Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, he was asked about this report and said that the U.S. should not joke around about Russia's red lines. He said, quote, "I won't be surprised by anything. The Americans have already crossed the threshold they set for themselves. They are being egged on, and Zelensky, of course, sees this and takes advantage of it. But they should understand they are joking about our red lines here. They shouldn't joke about our red lines," end quote. So we'll see what happens with that. The next story here, Ukraine's foreign minister resigns amid government shakeup. So Ukrainian foreign minister Dmytro Kuleba, who served in the role since 2020, resigned on Wednesday as part of the biggest Ukrainian government shakeup of the war. Kuleba's move came a day after several other ministers also resigned. In total, 6 ministers have stepped down, and they will be replaced as part of a reshuffling that Zelensky said would bring new energy to the government. He said, quote, "We need new energy today, and these steps are related only to the strengthening of our state in different directions," end quote. So Zelensky's term as president, I thought this was important context when we're talking about the Ukrainian government. Zelensky's term as president expired back in May, but he has stayed in power because there have been no elections since the Russian invasion. Parliamentary and presidential elections have both been delayed due to laws that prohibit holding a vote under martial law. Now, at one point, Zelensky did say he was open to holding elections if the West would fund them, but then he later ruled out the idea, and he's been under no pressure from the U.S. or any of his Western backers to hold an election. In fact, Blinken justified this whole thing when he went over to Ukraine a few months ago. So the Washington Post noted that Zelensky is carrying out this reshuffling ahead of a trip to the U.S. He's supposed to visit the U.S. sometime this month. I'm not exactly sure when. And he's expected to present a victory plan to U.S. officials. We don't know exactly what that plan will entail, but Ukrainian officials have been pushing hard for the U.S. to allow the use of the U.S. missiles for the long-range strikes in Russia, as we were just talking about. So I'm sure that's going to be another part of his visit. And throughout the war, Kuleba, the foreign minister who just resigned, he was one of the leading Ukrainian officials pushing for more military aid and was not afraid to criticize Kiev's Western supporters. This is something, he said some very critical things about the country's, supplying the war effort. He recently said that Ukraine's biggest problem was the Western concern for escalation. He said, quote, "Ever since the beginning of the large-scale invasion, the biggest problem Ukraine has been facing is the domination of the concept of escalation in the decision-making process among our partners," end quote. All right, so the next one here, Russian missiles targeting Ukraine nears Polish airspace. So this article's from Kyle Anzalone at the Libertarian Institute. The Polish military scrambled fighter jets in response to Russian missiles that came near Warsaw's airspace. The munitions were targeting a city in western Ukraine. Russia launched a major missile attack on the western Ukrainian city of Lviv on Wednesday, killing at least 7 people. The flight paths of some of the munitions came near Polish airspace, and then Warsaw scrambled warplanes. So Russia, there's been previous instances where Russian missiles have crossed in to Polish airspace during the bombardments of western Ukraine. They crossed in and then went back into Ukraine. And Russia has acknowledged this and says that it was accidental. Of course, there was that Ukrainian air defense missile that actually landed in Russia and killed 2 people. And we've also seen Russian drone debris in Romania. So this sort of thing, it's always, you always have to worry about that possibility of a Russian missile or Ukrainian missile crossing into another country, and where could things go from there? So in recent days, Moscow has ramped up its bombing of Ukrainian cities in response to the invasion of Kursk, and we have seen quite a few heavy rounds of missile strikes. All right, so I want to mention our sponsor for today. That is the Expat Money Summit. So the Expat Money Summit is the world's largest offshore event, which is taking place entirely online from October 7th to the 11th, put on by Mikkel Thorup, the host of the Expat Money Show, and a highly sought-after expat consultant with over 2 decades of experience. Mikkel is a fan of antiwar.com. Of course, geopolitics is very important for expats in the state of the world, so it's something that this conference focuses on. So if you're interested in this show, you would be interested in some of the speakers and also, I know that there are some expats who listen to this show. I'm sure there are people who have thought about getting citizenship in another country, a plan B, and you're going to learn about those things, how to do that at this summit. You also learn about international diversification of your money and things like that, and just also the expat lifestyle. Speakers include Dr. Ron Paul, Doug Casey, Scott Horton, Tom Woods, Mark Faber, Tom Luongo, and many more. To reserve your complimentary ticket, head over to expatmoneysummit.com. That is expatmoneysummit.com. If you want a VIP ticket, you could click the link and you'll get a $100 discount for that. Or you could go to the site and enter the code anti-war. VIP ticket gets you a lot of perks, including VIP panels that most people won't see. I'll be doing one of those talking about the risk of World War III. So again, expatmoneysummit.com. All right, so let's get back into the news here. Israel to pull out the roots in the West Bank. So Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant said Wednesday that the Israeli military was mowing the lawn in the Israeli-occupied West Bank, but will eventually need to pull out the roots. So mowing the lawn is a term that the Israeli military used for its bombing campaigns in Gaza pre-October 7th. The idea is that the raids, the bombings would reduce Hamas's military capability but not eliminate it, and it would eventually grow back, requiring another bombing campaign. And of course, in these bombing campaigns, many children were killed, lots of damage to civilian infrastructure and things like that. But that's what they would call it, mowing the lawn. So Gallant said, quote, "The process is an attack to prevent terror. We are mowing the lawn, but the moment will also come when we will pull out the roots. That must be done." So Israeli settler and military violence surged in the West Bank amid Israel's genocidal war in Gaza. The Israeli government has also approved new major land grabs in the occupied territory, and settlers have been taking over Palestinian homes. The Israeli actions have naturally led to an increase in armed Palestinian resistance. And discussing some of these resistance groups, Gallant said, quote, "These terror organizations that call themselves by all kinds of names in Nur Shams or Tulkarm or Farah or Jenin, they should be wiped out. Every such terrorist should be eliminated, or if they surrender, arrest them. There is no other option. Use all the forces, everyone who is needed with full strength," end quote. So last week, Israel launched its largest assault on the West Bank since 2022, which is still underway in northern areas of Jenin and Tulkarm, and Israel is planning more raids, more escalations in the West Bank. And, he's calling this a counterterrorism, operation. That's how they're framing this and portraying this. But of course, this is about, much more than that. When you have, the Israeli government wants to take over more land in the West Bank. They want to annex the territory. They want to conquer the territory. So when you see the things that are happening in Jenin, demolition of the roads and infrastructure, forcing people out of their homes, this seems like it's a lot more than just fighting these armed resistance groups that are there. How does demolishing the roads help that? Wouldn't it make that more difficult for the military to get around? So according to the Palestinian Health Ministry, 33 Palestinians have been killed in Israel's operation in the West Bank since it was launched last Tuesday, and a total of 685 Palestinians have been killed in the territory since October 7th. And again, the important point when we talk about this is that the government, it's not just the settlers, it's the government and it's the military, because the government approves settlement expansion. The military basically stands by while the settlers commit violence. And the government, again, has been approving land grabs and settlement expansion, and it's full of people who openly want to annex the West Bank, including Netanyahu. He's been very clear about that himself. It's not just Smotrich and Ben-Gvir. That this is the reality of what's happening here. All right, so the next one, life for Jenin residents in paralysis amid Israeli operation. This article's from Middle East Eye. As the Israeli military operation in Jenin and its environs in the occupied West Bank enters its second week, the situation has only gotten bleaker for Palestinians in the area. The Jenin municipality said that they've bulldozed 70% of the streets and water has been cut off from 80% of homes. Additionally, 20 kilometers of water and sewage networks, communication, and electricity cables have been demolished. Out of the 33 Palestinians who have been killed in the West Bank, 19 were in Jenin, so the most death has happened in Jenin. 7 of those were children, including a 16-year-old Palestinian girl, Lujan Musla, who was shot dead by Israeli forces in the town of Kafr Dan in the Jenin governorate on Tuesday. The Israeli army, they say her family is saying the Israeli army killed her dreams. That's a quote from someone. Ibrahim Musla, a relative of Lujan's, told Middle East Eye that Israeli snipers were stationed in several buildings in the area after the army stormed Kafr Dan. She was looking out her home's window to see the soldiers when an Israeli sniper shot her directly in the head the moment she pulled the curtain, Musla said. He said, quote, her parents and sisters started screaming and crying while she lay motionless. It seemed that she was killed instantly because the bullets were explosive and destroyed her brain, end quote. Just such brutal stuff here. And then an ambulance dispatched to her home. It came under Israeli sniper fire before eventually reaching the area 20 minutes later, a trip that would have otherwise taken 2 minutes. That's another thing they've been blocking. Ambulances and everything. So the mayor of Jenin told Middle East Eye that the Israeli operations have left the city looking like the aftermath of an earthquake. The most affected areas are the eastern neighborhoods where Jenin's refugee camp is located. Israeli forces have been stationed there for several days, besieging the area while carrying out bulldozing operations and demolitions. The mayor said, quote, no information has been received from the camp due to the tight siege and the cutting off of electricity, water, and communications. The commercial square area, which is considered the heart of Jenin, has been completely destroyed, and shopping has been completely stopped. Many shops have been demolished, bulldozed, and burned amid a severe shortage of food and medicine, end quote. Israeli forces have occupied many homes and expelled their owners, the mayor added. So again, sounds a lot like what's happening in Gaza. We haven't seen really heavy airstrikes yet, dropping those 2,000-pound bombs to destroy all the buildings, but we are seeing destruction and a siege here. All right, so the next one here, Netanyahu's map erasing West Bank sparks condemnation. This is another one from Middle East Eye. So Netanyahu, when he gave his little speech the other day, saying that he will not give up the Philadelphia corridor, which is the Gaza-Egypt border, which is the thing that's impeding a ceasefire deal, he did it with this map that showed Israel and Gaza, but it erased the West Bank. Just shows Israel, that area that is the West Bank is just part of Israel. And this is something Netanyahu has done before. He actually did this at the UN, I think just a few weeks before October 7th. Basically the gist of the speech was, look, we're normalizing with these Arab countries and we don't even have to, settle any problem, the Palestinian problem. We just, we're going to integrate with the region and not have to give the Palestinians anything. It was essentially what he was saying. And he's showing a map with that just shows Israel, Gaza, and the West Bank are part of it. And then a couple weeks later, October 7th happened. But this article is basically just about the criticism that he has come under for using this map. And of course, this is not any kind of surprise to see Netanyahu do this. All right, so the next one here, Israel kills 42 Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. So Gaza's health ministry said Wednesday that 42 more Palestinians were killed by Israel's assault on the besieged territory in the previous 24-hour period, and another 107 were wounded. The new casualties bring the total recorded death toll to 40,861, and the number of wounded to 94,398. The health ministry's numbers do not include Palestinians who are missing and presumed dead under the rubble, which has previously been estimated to be about 10,000 people. You look at this picture here. This is Khan Yunis. I mean, it's kind of an overhead shot of just a woman walking down the road, but you see the destruction. I mean, it really looks like World War II or something. man, you just see how far it goes. All these buildings destroyed. It's also unclear how many, so when we're talking about the death toll again, how many people have died in Gaza due to indirect causes. Again, this is something I always put into the stories about the death toll, because it's important to understand that this number is probably much lower than the real death toll. And then there was that Lancet letter from experts. They put the number at 186,000 of indirect deaths, and they were talking about deaths that will happen in the future as a result of Israel's bombing campaign and siege. And they came to that number using the death toll from June, which was about 37,000. So if they did that estimate again, it would be higher than 186,000. It would be over 200. So Israeli strikes were reported in Gaza on Wednesday across the territory, including in the southern city of Khan Yunis, the central Nusayrat camp, and in northern areas, including in Gaza City. There's no end to the violence in sight. Netanyahu is still, even he said it again on Wednesday, that he's not going to give up the Philadelphia corridor, and the U.S. is supposedly preparing like a final ceasefire proposal. Hamas is saying, let's just do the one that Biden said, and the U.S. is apparently preparing something new. So just not very hopeful that that's going to lead to anything. All right, so the next one here, Israeli podcasters call to erase every living being in Gaza. So this is another one from Middle East Eye. We have quite a few of them. So a clip from an English language Israeli podcast showing hosts Naor Menenker and Eitan Weinstein discussing the idea of eradicating all Palestinians in the occupied West Bank and Gaza has gone viral online. So the show is called Two Nice Jewish Boys. I would argue that they are not nice at all. But it shows one of the hosts, Weinstein, saying, quote, "If you gave me a button to just erase Gaza, every single living being in Gaza would no longer be living tomorrow. I would press it in a second," end quote. He claimed that most Israelis would do the same. Menenker added that they would also want to wipe out Palestinians in the territories. That's them referring to the West Bank. Weinstein said, quote, "Because that's the reality we live in. It's us or them, and it has to be them," end quote. He added that Israelis want full-scale war, saying, quote, "Full-scale war wouldn't mean that we're just in Gaza. And it also wouldn't mean that we're doing what we're doing in Gaza, because in Gaza, maybe there's mass destruction, but there's not massive death. Forgive us if we don't give a shit if everybody there dies. It's just the way we feel. It's just the way Israelis feel," end quote. In a later episode, the two discussed what they deemed to be Israel's failures in its ongoing war in Gaza, with Weinstein saying that the government should stop trying to get international acceptance and instill sovereignty over and annex the West Bank and Gaza. Make it all Israel. So it's on YouTube. You can go watch it. And again, it's in English. It's just really, really sick stuff. All right, so the next one here, Israeli strikes kill woman in southern Lebanon. This one is from Jason Ditz. Israel carried out attacks against southern Lebanon on Wednesday, hitting several towns and villages. The Lebanese health ministry is reporting that a woman was killed and at least 5 were wounded, including a 12-year-old boy. The woman was killed and 2 others were wounded in the village of Kabrikha when Israeli artillery fire hit the area. An airstrike was also reported in Hula, which wounded at least 3 other people. So this continues. Hezbollah responded by firing an estimated 65 rockets against northern Israel. So now it's been a little while since that big exchange of fire between Israel and Hezbollah, and we are back to kind of the usual rate of fire that we've seen since October 7th. And, you know, fortunately for people in South Lebanon, that means that people are dying just about every day. All right, so the next one here, U.S. to set up new military repair hubs in 5 Asian nations. So the Pentagon plans to establish new military repair hubs in 5 Asia-Pacific nations amid its buildup in the region aimed at China. This was reported by Nikkei Asia. Sources told Nikkei that the hubs will be set up in Japan, South Korea, Singapore, the Philippines, and Australia. The project, known as Regional Sustainment Framework, envisions a global network of repair facilities for U.S. planes, ships, vehicles, and other war-fighting equipment. The idea is to create facilities to repair and maintain equipment closer to its deployment area rather than bringing it back to the U.S. The Pentagon plans to launch pilot programs in the Asia-Pacific and then establish similar hubs in Europe and Latin America. So this is something they want to do all over. They're starting in these countries near China because this is what this is about. This is part of the military buildup against China. And I have to include in this story, recently these comments from the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Charles Q. Brown Jr., the highest-ranking U.S. military officer, him talking about war with China, and an example of how U.S. military officials are openly discussing and saying they're preparing for a direct war with China, despite the risk of that quickly turning into a nuclear war. So this was back in July. Brown was asked if he believed the U.S. could beat China in a war over Taiwan. He said, yes. He said, quote, "Yes, I'm fully confident in our force. We are the most lethal, most respected combat force in the world," end quote. He acknowledged that the war would be the largest conflict since World War II and said the U.S. was preparing for it by stockpiling weapons, ammunition, and other types of supplies. He said, quote, "These will be major conflicts akin to what we saw in World War II, and so we've got to come to grips with that," end quote. They're preparing for an unwinnable war, a war that could destroy humanity. And I just feel like it doesn't get enough attention. A war that could very easily be avoided, a war that everything that they're doing is leading to could end up provoking it, when if they took a different approach, war would not be inevitable. Not that I think it's inevitable now, but again, it's as if they continue on this path, they're making it more and more likely. All right, so the last story here, the U.S. makes new claims of Russian election interference. So this is just, I don't know. I mean, this came out on Wednesday. The Biden administration said that they took a bunch of actions over new claims of Russian election interference. When we use that word, what does election interference mean? This is, most of these actions that they took were targeted against RT, which is the Russian media outlet. And going back to 2016, the Russian election interference, they had this whole report on it on RT and everything. And it was just RT's coverage of the election. It was their media coverage of the election. And of course they say, oh, this was ordered by, Vladimir Putin and everything, but they never show you any evidence for that. So these are unsubstantiated claims, and it's something that the administration might be doing to give themselves, a leg up in the election, because they're claiming that Russia prefers Trump, and is that election interference, them doing this? And and of course we're talking about the U.S. I mean, who interferes with elections around the world more than the country that declares who should be a leader here, who should be a leader there? So this is all just nonsense. That's the way that I view this. That's the way I think we should view it. But I did write up some of the actions that they took. And one of them, the State Department said that they imposed visa restrictions. That's going to, on 10 Russian individuals, including 7 RT employees. Okay. The State Department also said that it was listing the Russian media group, Russia Segodnya, and its subsidiaries as foreign missions. I'm not sure exactly what impact that will have. These subsidiaries include RIA Novosti, RT, TV Novosti, Rupli, and Sputnik. I'm sure most of you are familiar with Sputnik. The third action announced by the State Department was offering up to $10 million as a reward for information on a hacking group known as, this is the name of the hacking group. It's Russian Angry Hackers Did It. That's the name of the group. The State Department claimed that they previously engaged in election influence in other countries and saying that they're a threat to the 2024 election. So, I mean, if that's the name of the hacker group, maybe they're trying to throw you off that they're Russian. I don't know. It just seems kind of ridiculous to me. And then the DOJ also unveiled an indictment against 2 Russians who are accused of covertly funding a media group based in the U.S. So this was the big, they made a big show of it, big story in CNN before it happened, and then they came out. Again, I think this is them trying to help themselves out in the election. And then the U.S. government, which is more, which is concerning, is that the U.S. government is going after Americans who have worked for RT, and that includes Scott Ritter, who's written for RT, the former UN's weapons inspector, who's a very staunch critic of the proxy war in Ukraine, of U.S. support for Israel. The FBI raided his home, so that has chilling implications certainly for free speech. So that, I think, is something to, because they're using the Foreign Agents Registration Act to go after him. I think we might start seeing that used more and more. And of course, that's not used against AIPAC, even though AIPAC openly funds elections to sway them, in favor of candidates who are more in favor of a certain foreign country. But AIPAC doesn't have to register as a foreign agent. I mean, it's just completely ridiculous. You see the way things are selectively enforced when it comes to this law. All right, so that is it for the news for today. Please go check out our viewpoints, one from Katrina Vanden Heuvel and James Carden. Sanctions relief for hostages. It could save 9 American lives. One from Ted Snyder, Stand Up to Zelensky, a plea for sanity. One from Ido Conrad, Israeli settlers believe their moment has come. One from Keith Knight, Justifying Evil. One from Paul R. Pillar, Why Israel is Attacking the West Bank. Please go check all of that out. That is everything for me for today. If you want to support this show, you can share it. Tell your friends about antiwar.com. Like, subscribe, comment. All that stuff really helps out. I will be back tomorrow with some more news. Thanks for listening.